Every day the mother balances an egg on top of chopsticks. Then she takes out an old photo kept for 20 years and quietly prays. But her daughter wishes she could tear the picture to shreds. Because rumor says if one day the egg falls without breaking, the man who disappeared long ago will reappear. For 20 years it never once worked. Meanwhile Pearl grew from a bullied child into a beautiful young woman. But life is unpredictable and fate can turn quickly. Her mother's years of hard labor left her with retinal problems. The doctor said let her see whatever she wishes while she still can, and meet whoever she wants to meet soon. Because later even if she wants to it may be too late. Looking at her mother's gray hair and worn face, Pearl's eyes filled with tears. Her mother had suffered all her life, and now faced this pain in her old age. Pearl knew her mother carried a wish in her heart, though she never spoke of it. That missing father was always the man she longed for. Pearl decided to help her fulfill that wish. In Vietnam the easiest way to go to Korea was through marriage, so she took a job as a matchmaker, connecting single Korean men with local women, while looking for someone acceptable herself. Soon Pearl became Director Kim's right hand. Because her mother had worked in Korea as a nanny, she had picked up some broken Korean phrases, and Pearl used that skill to do well in the business. But most of the Korean men were either bald or had hidden illnesses, so Pearl kept hesitating. One day her mother's condition worsened again. She skipped an airport pickup to care for her, causing the guest's bag to be stolen. When Pearl rushed back, the guest slapped her across the face. Everyone was shocked by the scene. It was the guest's first time in Vietnam, and she nearly lost everything just to find a wife. She swore she would leave tomorrow, not staying a single extra minute here. Director Kim was furious with Pearl. He had said in her interview he hated people who break promises. Now how was she any different from the father who ran back to Korea? His words cut into Pearl's heart like a knife. She thought of being abandoned by her father, while her mother shined shoes to raise her, without even a home to live in. From then on she swore never to be like him. That night Pearl pushed in a rose foot tub, a little touch of Vietnam's tradition, but the client only grew more irritable seeing her. Living like this was something she had never endured before. No matter what Pearl said or did she got no sympathy. Pearl finally shared her life story hoping for compassion. It turned out her father was Korean, who met her mother on a business trip, and once promised he would return. The client knew Korean men could be unreliable, but deceiving a Vietnamese girl for 20 years was rare. She chose not to hold Pearl accountable, but insisted someone else take over the job. Director Kim quickly volunteered. If he could close this deal, he could relax for the rest of the year, but the client's standards were too high. She wanted someone who spoke Korean and was kind. She finally showed interest in an elementary school teacher. It seemed the matter was almost settled, but the teacher had one condition: to buy her parents a big boat, which was completely unreasonable. The client felt there was no point continuing. At that moment Pearl stared at the man in the photo. She couldn't wait any longer. The doctor had already given the final warning. If she couldn't find her father soon, her mother would never see her first love again. So Pearl gathered her courage and returned the photo to the client. The client thought Pearl wanted a tip, but in fact Pearl wanted to become her daughter-in-law. Director Kim quickly pulled Pearl aside. Everyone thought marrying into Korea meant a good life, but the matchmakers knew the truth. Those men always had some flaws. Though the client's son looked handsome, and had a college degree, who knew what problems he might be hiding, even needing his mother to find him a wife. But Pearl couldn't wait any longer for her mom's sake. She had to track down the father she had never met. That night the client thought long and hard. On paper Pearl seemed suitable, half Korean by blood, but her dark skin and short stature didn't fit Korean ideals. The client was torn. The next day she decided to visit Pearl's home. If Pearl was pure and kind she might still consider it. When Pearl saw her at the door she was shocked. She quickly offered her homemade green juice. In fact, even if the client hadn't come Pearl would have gone to her. Her mother's eyesight couldn't wait. She could cook, clean and do everything a wife should. All she asked was to be taken to Korea. The client said no decisions yet. They would live together for 2 days first to see how it went. I have never seen such a calculating woman. She first tricked an honest man, used his money to go abroad, then dumped him the moment she secured a rich boyfriend overseas. She even sent the poor man to jail just to cut him off. Meanwhile she cleaned up her image as an innocent young lady, planning to marry a wealthy heir obsessed with purity. But Junyu was left broken and developed severe anxiety, every night plagued by nightmares. He needed medication just to breathe. Even a normal job was impossible. At interviews he would freeze up unable to speak, collapsing before saying a single word. His mother was heartbroken. Her son had always been her pride. She never imagined one trip abroad would ruin him like this. Meanwhile the schemer Ji-young was busy trying on wedding dresses. When a strange bouquet arrived, Youngman's face instantly changed, until his father appeared, handing him the keys to a brand new Porsche. Only then did Youngmin smile again. Ji-young smugly thought she chose right. This was the life she wanted, but she never imagined. Her future mother-in-law had deep ties with her ex's family. Even Youngman's grandmother knew Junyu's mother. To show off her glamorous new daughter-in-law, Youngman's mother introduced Ji-young to the ladies. When the two women locked eyes they were stunned, never expecting to meet like this. Junyu's mother splashed a glass of water on Youngman's mother. She was furious beyond control. This woman stole her man back in school, and now her son was stealing her son's fiance. It was unbearable. She rushed home demanding her son marry quickly. Now Ji-young was marrying into her enemy's family. She despised her son's weakness, and hated Ji-young's betrayal even more. Youngman's mother almost collapsed in anger. The gathering had turned into chaos. Even her husband sided with Junyu's mom. He believed she must have her reasons. After all, they grew up together and knew each other well. She was not the type to make a scene for nothing. As an old friend, Youngman's mom felt he was right. She wanted to ask and clear things up. Ji-young overheard everything. If her past affair was exposed, she would be thrown out instantly. She quickly dialed Junyu's home, begging his mother to keep quiet. But Junyu's mother didn't even want to hear her voice. Still, Ji-young remembered the man who once gave her everything. Junyu was still on medication for his condition. When he suddenly saw Ji-young again, he still loved her deeply. But in her mind she only thought of using him, even blaming him for ruining her future. Why couldn't he let her go? Why ruin her marriage? Junyu finally got his answer. It was enough to know she once loved him, but Ji-young was gambling. Gambling he still cared enough to cover for her. Sure enough, he called his mother right away. She was about to expose Ji-young to Youngman's mom, to show the schemer's true face, but her son begged on the phone, offering to marry a stranger just to protect Ji-young. He pleaded for her silence. For Ji-young, Junyu sacrificed his own future. When asked again by Youngman's mom, she lied, saying she only lashed out from jealousy. Youngman's mom stopped doubting her. After all, jealousy made sense. Meanwhile, Pearl's mother shared her past with her daughter, showing songs her husband once sang, and his name written in Korean. Though 20 years had passed, she believed he still remembered her. Maybe he couldn't come to Vietnam for reasons of his own. Before Pearl left, her mother reminded her to treat her in-laws well. True sincerity would be returned with kindness. Across the sea lay Pearl's destination. Soon she landed in Korea. Her country style embarrassed Junyu's mother. She pulled Pearl into the restroom, changed her clothes to something decent. No one could know she was from Vietnam, or her family would lose face. Even her son would feel ashamed. That same day was also Youngman's wedding. Junyu's mother refused to fall behind, though her son struggled with illness. But a person's life is to fight for one breath. She wanted to prove he was no less than others, and Pearl seemed more than willing to marry him. Can you imagine marrying a Vietnamese woman for only $1,500? The moment she met Junyu, Pear was captivated by his good looks. She promised she would study Korean diligently, and would not give up on learning Korean cooking. All she asked was that Junyu not send her back home. Junyu said he just wanted everything to flow naturally. He did not want others to suffer because of his illness. His mother also promised Pear that once everything settled down, she would bring Pear's mother from Vietnam, so she could enjoy life with them in Korea. She even said she would treat Pear like her own daughter, as long as Pear loved her son sincerely. At this moment, Pear felt incredibly happy. Though she carried the mission of finding her absent father, she was very satisfied with Junyu's family. It was her first time in Korea and everything amazed her. On their wedding night, she even dragged Junyu outside to see the moon. The moon looked bigger and brighter than in Vietnam, but Junyu was filled with guilt. He wanted to overcome his shadows for his family, but his past wounds made him unable to move forward. So he slipped away to drink alone on the beach. His mother wanted to ask if the wedding night went well, but Pear answered the call instead, and Junyu himself had gone out for air. His father told his wife to accept things calmly. They had done what they could, and now only time could decide the rest. Meanwhile, Junyu could not forget the cold face of his ex-girlfriend. He could not understand why she treated him that way despite their love. Pear gently put a coat over him. Her care warmed his heart. To help him heal, Pear prepared a Vietnamese wedding ritual. If they shared the same cup of wine, it meant they would never be apart. She also brought a letter from her mother to her new son-in-law, but it was written in Vietnamese which Junyu could not read, so Pear read it aloud for him. Before the wedding, her mother had prepared a dress. Her daughter had not lived an easy life, and she feared she might not see her again many times in this lifetime. She asked her son-in-law to cherish Pear. As long as her daughter was happy, she would endure anything. By the end, Pear was in tears, and Junyu was overwhelmed with guilt. He admitted he was a man trapped by his condition, unable to go out alone, unable to work alone, often waking from nightmares at night. He said he could not fulfill a husband's role. Then he pulled out a large sum of money, hoping Pear would return to Vietnam and live well. But Pear had her own mission. She had to find her father before her mother lost her sight. Even knowing this was a sham, she had no choice but to continue for her mother's dream. Pear asked Junyu to let her stay for 2 years. After that, she would leave willingly, because in 2 years she would gain Korean citizenship, and would not be forced back. Besides, his mother would never give up on finding him a wife. Even if Pear left, someone else would take her place. But Junyu still refused. Pear had no choice but to reveal her true purpose in Korea. In the end, Junyu gave in to her tears, and agreed as long as they remained husband and wife in name only. In his heart, he still longed for his ex, wanting to keep himself untouched. On what should have been a perfect wedding night, they slept separated by a glass wall. During their honeymoon, Pear even caught a cold. She longed to truly be his wife, but Junyu's refusal shattered her view of men. Soon they adjusted their moods and returned home. At dinner her sister-in-law served Vietnamese noodles, which their father had spent the whole afternoon making, even injuring his fingers pressing the noodles. Per, who had never felt such care, was deeply touched. A happy family scene was all she had ever dreamed of. Her mother-in-law held her hand and said, "From now on we are family, and must take care of each other." Her aunt encouraged her to eat more warmly. Per felt guilty inside, for hiding her true reason and deceiving them all. Their kindness only made her feel worse. She longed to truly become his wife, as a way of repaying his parents' love. But Junyu knew his condition, and any closeness with a woman triggered his illness. Their argument was witnessed by his mother. Seeing her son's fragile recovery, she could not let Per leave. She immediately dragged Per to the family company, and confessed the truth about his illness, saying his ex had left him this way. He was once a cheerful, handsome man. She feared Per would not have married him if she knew, and blamed herself for it all. She only wished Per could settle here peacefully, and believed Junyu would heal with Per's care. Hearing her mother-in-law's pleas, Per felt torn inside. At his aunt's party, a man unexpectedly saw his first love after 10 years apart. His eyes were filled with shock, her eyes were full of hatred. Ji Young even thought Junwoo was following her, trying to ruin her happy life. No matter how pitiful he looked, there was no going back. What she didn't know was that after their breakup, Junwoo developed a social disorder. For years he had been unable to deal with strangers. Her harsh words only made his condition worse. He rushed outside, struggling to breathe, watching helplessly as his first love smiled with another man. His heart felt like it was being torn apart. All those endless what-ifs were nothing but a fragile dream he built himself. The fine lines at the corner of her eyes when she smiled, he once called them the folds of the moon. Now they unfolded for someone else, like a flower in full bloom that no longer needed him. By evening his family realized he never came home. His father panicked and drove out to look for him. After searching everywhere, he finally found him in a narrow alley. Junwoo could barely breathe. If not eased soon, it could become life-threatening. The young woman from Vietnam who just married in was frightened and stepped back. His parents rushed him back home. Everyone was frantic. Only Pearl seemed out of place. She never imagined his illness was so severe. No wonder he said seeing her would change her mind, and she would never stay in this house. His mother didn't want to delay Pearl's life. She planned to send her back to Vietnam in a few days. The one most heartbroken was his mother. She had tried countless ways over the years, but her son never improved. She feared he might never get better. She thought marrying Pearl might help, but it clearly hadn't. At that moment, kind-hearted Pearl was still worried about him. His aunt told her to get some rest. Though Junwoo looked frightening, it would pass after a while, if not for that greedy woman in the past, who landed him in prison abroad where he suffered. How could a gifted student have ended up like this? Pearl felt no joy about leaving, only worry for him. The next day, as soon as she entered, he drove her out. He didn't want her to waste her life on him. He had just had another attack yesterday. Still, he tried to prove himself by riding the subway. The crowds only made things worse. It proved he was nothing but broken. His mother's heart ached as she watched. Pearl touched the wooden carving he made, torn with emotion, when he suddenly appeared behind her. Hearing she was leaving, he didn't stop her. Instead, he said it was the right choice. He handed her some money he had saved, wishing she would find happiness, not waste her time on someone broken like him. As for her father, he promised to keep searching, and invite her back to Korea once he was found. Pearl was deeply moved. As a child who never knew love, she didn't know how to repay him. The day of her departure soon arrived. On the way to the airport, she kept asking what would become of him. Would another girl ever marry in? But Pearl was already their last hope. No Korean woman would choose a man who couldn't communicate. He likely had no chance in this life. As Pearl sat on the plane waiting, her mind drifted back to their time together. She suddenly asked to get off. She couldn't leave him behind. Missing him might mean regret for life. She ran out of the airport following her memory, but got lost in the parking lot. Luckily, his aunt happened to pass by, and saw Pearl sitting on the ground. Pearl hugged her in relief, terrified of not finding her way back. When everyone saw Pearl return, they were stunned. Junwoo immediately pulled her outside. This time Pearl had made up her mind. No matter what he said, she wouldn't leave. She would stay to help him heal, to turn the man she loved into a good husband. He was both touched and troubled by her decision. He never thought this woman from Vietnam would be so determined. Even his mother advised her to leave. His illness was not recent. It might last a lifetime. If she were in Pearl's shoes, she would have left already. But Pearl had been bullied for being mixed race since childhood. Schools rejected her and she had no friends. Every time she cried home, her mother would say, "Vietnamese women are like doors open in a storm. They don't close just because the storm is strong. When the storm passes, there will be a bright tomorrow." She would stay and protect him until he healed. The woman gave up everything to marry a Korean man, yet every night she had to sleep on the floor. But she didn't mind at all. Whenever she had time, she would stare at Junyu like a lovesick fool, silently vowing in her heart to heal Junyu. Junju threw herself into learning Korean knowledge. She could spend a whole day mastering even a smart rice cooker. Their sweet moments didn't go unnoticed by his mother. Junyu hadn't been this happy since falling ill. They had prepared all the paperwork for a cross-border marriage. Once they signed at the registry office, there would be no turning back in their marriage. But just as Junyu was about to sign, a flash of his first love crossed his mind. Yet he resolutely signed his name. At the registry, Junyu grew tense again upon seeing the police. The sweat on his forehead was proof enough. He wished he could leave this place immediately. But kind-hearted Jinju had already won Junyu's heart. He endured the strange stares and completed the paperwork. Jinju happily shared her joy with Junyu. Junyu couldn't stay a single minute longer. Frowning, he ran back. Memories of pain from his first love slowly resurfaced. They had once made vows by the sea, had engagement rings. It all felt like it happened just yesterday. Even now, Junyu felt a sense of unreality. That night, he had a terrible nightmare again. Jinju rushed in to comfort him, but Junyu directly sent her away. She didn't expect to be rejected right after registering their marriage. Junyu's coldness left Jinju confused. Luckily, her mother-in-law comforted her. As long as she was sincere, Junyu would surely be moved. After all, no one would refuse a kind and beautiful girl. Jinju felt energized. She wanted to heal Junyu and be a competent Korean daughter-in-law. Though she had never used a microwave before, she mistook it for a mini sterilizer and put the freshly washed dishes inside. Soon a reaction occurred. Jinju shouted that it was on fire. Her mother-in-law rushed over to help, but she was speechless. She told Jinju to fetch a broom and sweep the mess. Jinju hurried outside and coincidentally saw a hair broom. Seeing Jinju constantly making things worse, her mother-in-law felt utterly helpless. It happened to be Jinyu's checkup day. She told Jinju to go to the hospital and not worry about anything here. But when Jinju thoughtfully handed Junyu his jacket, Junyu had no intention of going. He knew his condition was incurable. Mother and daughter-in-law went together. The doctor advised Junyu to do light exercise and try to interact with others. Being alone all the time made it hard to escape past shadows. Jinju mustered courage, hoping for advice from the doctor. The doctor quickly showed a treatment plan. Junyu's illness stemmed from past memories. As long as he was treated sincerely in the future, even a stone could be warmed. The doctor's words gave Jinju endless hope. That evening she began her plan, inviting Junyu to hike together the next day, and studying treatment methods for communication disorder syndrome in front of him. Though Junyu was impatient, it didn't stop Jinju. Early next morning she woke Junyu for a hike, but he saw it as pity from her. The more people treated him that way, the more useless he felt. He even asked Jinju not to do meaningless things out of guilt. Jinju reminded him of his parents, and those helping him along the way. Junyu had made many efforts before. His mother would buy a lucky tree every year, but it would always wither mysteriously. He was tired and didn't want to disappoint his family again. Jinju's eyes teared up, looking at the lucky tree, and the money Junyu gave her days ago. She made a decision, and rushed alone into the crowded streets of Korea, determined to buy a lucky tree that wouldn't wither, and learn how to cultivate it. She believed persistence would solve everything. When Junyu saw this silly Vietnamese woman risking getting lost to buy a lucky tree, he felt deeply touched. Under Jinju's care, the lucky tree thrived every day. Its leaves grew unusually large. Jinju's persistence finally moved Junyu. He knelt solemnly before his parents, promising to try again. This time with his family's hopes in mind, he believed he would get better. The mother-in-law noticed that her daughter-in-law kept visiting the same hotel. She wondered if there was some secret she was hiding, so she started secretly investigating Ji Ying's movements. Unexpectedly, all of her recent expenses had been spent there. She instructed her staff not to tell anyone about it. She thought Ji Ying would restrain herself, but instead, she became even bolder. The elite family could never tolerate a third party, especially since her son was picky about relationships. After careful consideration, the mother-in-law decided to tell her son. Yongming had absolute trust in his wife. They had been together for 3 years. She wouldn't secretly cheat on him. The mother-in-law threw the evidence in front of her son, telling him to handle it himself. Yongming wanted to give his wife one last chance, but Ji Ying had no idea what he was talking about, and she had been too busy to pay attention. The next day, Yongming followed his wife to the hotel. He wanted to call her down to talk, but she didn't have time to answer. Yongming had to use his mother's information to find the 12th floor. Unexpectedly, he saw his wife in a soaked state. Ji Ying had fabricated her background to marry into wealth, and her husband caught sight of her mother's destitute state. She realized everything might be ruined, but with Ji Ying's effort, Yongming decided to sit down and hear what her mother had to say. Ji Ying's mom admitted she wasn't wealthy. She had just been released from prison for fraud. She had once been a socialite, but after her husband passed away, she was scammed out of everything. Ji Ying's mom knew it would be hard for Yongming to believe, so she asked if he married Ji Ying out of love. Her presence shouldn't affect their relationship. She also had her own way of life. It wouldn't interfere with their love. What Yongming couldn't accept was deception. There were so many opportunities to reveal her identity. Ji Ying immediately acted like an actress, claiming she was afraid her husband would abandon her. Her crying softened Yongming's heart. Little did he know, it was all fake. Yongming was stepping right into Ji Ying's trap, just like Junyu was tricked into his communication disorder. During the Cold War, Ji Ying acted vulnerable, every day begging for Junyu's forgiveness. Yongming was still impressed by Ji Ying. At least she had never dated before. She had given him her purest self. When Shi Ying's mom was about to leave, Yongming placed a large sum of money in front of her, hoping she wouldn't bother Shi Ying after leaving. He would continue sending her living expenses regularly. Shi Ying's mom pretended to be indifferent, but she was delighted inside, even congratulated her daughter for finding a good man. Shi Ying smiled knowingly. Yongming ultimately fell under her charm. Shi Ying then rushed to the company building. Without a word, she hugged Yongming saying I love you, but no wall is airtight. The mother-in-law thought the issue was solved, yet she saw her daughter-in-law leaving happily, clearly unaffected by her husband. She secretly followed Shi Ying to the destination, determined to catch her in the act. Shi Ying had already arrived at her mother's, only to see the scumbag who had bankrupted their family before. Her mother was still enchanted by him. The man even greeted Shi Ying warmly. Shi Ying demanded he leave immediately. She couldn't understand why her mother hadn't learned from being scammed once, why she still lingered with him. Her mother slapped her to wake her up. Money doesn't make her obey. Shi Ying had grown up in such an environment. She vowed to change her life. She desperately wanted to enter high society. With money, she wouldn't live like her mother. But just as she was about to leave, she ran into her mother-in-law. Shi Ying begged her not to intervene, promising to explain everything properly later. The mother-in-law wouldn't listen. She had to catch the person today for her son, but when she opened the door, she saw a different scene. Her in-law, who ran a company abroad, was living in a slum, and entangled with a man. The mother-in-law had nothing to say. She realized Shi Ying had deceived everyone. She demanded Shi Ying explain everything. Shi Ying had no choice but to kneel. Admitting her mother was a recently released fraudster, the mother-in-law was nearly driven mad, swearing she would never live under the same roof. Yongming witnessed this scene. He dragged his kneeling wife up, declaring, "This is my marriage," hoping his parents wouldn't interfere. A true rebellious son. This meant Shi Ying's plan had succeeded. Meanwhile, Pearl began her own plan. She had to heal Junyu, who had been heartbroken by Shi Ying. But after only a few steps, Junyu felt short of breath. Memories of his prison days surfaced in his mind. Pearl was recording her daily progress. She turned around and saw Junyu looking near death. She rushed over to comfort him. The man married a Vietnamese wife, and after the wedding, he was treated like a treasure. Jinju prepares seaweed rolls for her husband every morning before his run. Whenever Junyu feels even a little discomfort, Jinju always offers her thoughtful care. If Junyu is thirsty, she hands him water. If Junyu is hungry, she gives him hot food. But unexpectedly, it was knocked over by Junyu. Jinju, heartbroken over the food her mother-in-law made, rushed to pick it up, but she slipped and fell. She severely scraped her thigh. Junyu didn't say a word of comfort. Instead, he scolded Jinju for coming over. Now she's hurt, and it's just making things worse. Jinju's eyes filled with tears. She felt a slight regret in her heart, but thinking of her mother, who worked so hard to support herself, and her mother's daily advice and expectations, she couldn't give up on the life she now had. Unbeknownst to her, Junyu was standing outside the door. Hearing Jinju crying, he hesitated to enter. He was afraid that he would be tortured by his conscience. Junyu knew that everything was caused by his illness. Pushing Jinju away was to avoid causing her any more harm. The next day, Jinju was as energetic as ever. Even without self-esteem, even with rejection, she was determined to get Junyu treated. Because Jinju always believed that once Junyu was better, she would get the rewards she deserved. Sure enough, the next day, Junyu prepared shoes for Jinju. The kind-hearted Cinderella had no idea that Junyu was slowly being touched. Before long, they reached halfway up the mountain. Jinju covered her injured leg with a hat, not wanting Junyu to see it. She was afraid it would make Junyu feel disgusted. But the next moment, Junyu pushed her hand away. When he saw the shocking wound, he was taken aback. He tenderly applied medicine to her wound. The sensation of his touch made Jinju's heart melt. From the side, Junyu didn't seem so unpleasant anymore. After applying the medicine, Junyu went back to his business. Jinju felt an indescribable happiness. She knew that Junyu must have applied the medicine because he was concerned about her leg. Once home, she looked at their wedding photo, and kissed it twice. She thought to herself that her husband was so cute. Unexpectedly, while changing clothes, Junyu barged in. Jinju hurriedly shrank back in embarrassment. Junyu, understanding her reaction, ran out. Although they had been married for months, they hadn't had a real husband and wife relationship. Jinju's silly appearance made Junyu almost laugh. When applying the medicine, Junyu noticed many small injuries on Jinju's feet. He thought it was from her mischievousness as a child, but it turned out it was because she was half Korean, half Vietnamese. She had been looked down on by purebred Vietnamese since childhood. Their only pleasure was to bully Jinju. Since then, she swore to break free from the vicious cycle. So now, no matter how difficult it gets, Jinju would never shed a tear. Junyu, hearing this, felt a deep pain in his heart. He couldn't help but start to reflect on whether he had been too harsh. The next day, Junyu started another journey up the mountain. Only by overcoming the fear in his heart would he be healed. When he was at his weakest, the nightmare quietly approached. Junyu recalled the dark experiences from prison. His breathing grew rapid. But seeing Jinju's concerned look, he seemed to find the light. After taking a sip of water, he set off again. Finally, with Jinju's relentless efforts, Junyu reached the mountaintop. He shouted loudly at the top, venting his emotions. Although it seemed short, it was the result of Junyu's 1.5-year effort. Without Jinju's encouragement, this wouldn't have been possible. He immediately called his mother to report his success. Jinju, too, excitedly said that Junyu had succeeded. Now, Junyu's recovery was more than halfway complete. At dinner, the whole family was overjoyed. His old father even started singing a cheerful song. If his son could recover, he would definitely become the best person. But when Jinju saw the crab being served, she quickly ran back to her room, because crab was her mother's favorite food. She hadn't been home in so long, and didn't know how her mother was doing, whether her eyes could still see. Junyu, to distract Jinju, decided to try riding the subway tomorrow. But as soon as he stepped into the aisle, Junyu felt he might collapse. His breathing became rapid. Jinju quickly urged Junyu to go back, but this time, Junyu was determined. He was determined to cure his communication disorder. The confined space made Junyu sweat profusely. The foreign prisoners from the jail appeared in his mind again. He ignored Jinju's pleas and ran up. Junyu knew that if he stayed any longer, he would be trapped in a never-ending hell. Once home, he quickly took several tranquilizers. He didn't want to worry his parents, and certainly didn't want to disappoint Jinju. Jinju, beside him, comforted him, saying these were all just illusions. She would always be by his side. She would never leave and never give up. But every night, Junyu would think of his first love. He couldn't let go and couldn't believe. What was it about him that wasn't good enough for his first love? The frustration in his heart reminded him of Jinju. At that moment, Jinju was still working hard, trying to find more ways to heal Junyu from the broadcasts. When Junyu saw this, it seemed like he made a decision. The next morning, they headed back to the subway station. Junyu still couldn't conquer his inner demons, but with repeated experiences, he slowly took a big step forward. Junyu was able to step down the stairs. Watching the cars pass, he still didn't dare to board, but his love for Jinju was growing step by step. After a period of hard work, Junyu finally boarded the subway. He tightly held Jinju's hand. His breathing gradually became steady. No matter how fast the train went, he was no longer afraid. Junyu had never thought he could defeat his illness. It was all because of Jinju's efforts. He gently held Jinju's hand. The man carves a wooden sculpture of a woman without facial features every day. Not even his wife is allowed to touch it. There's also a strange piano at home. His wife casually touched a few notes, which made Junyu feel extremely annoyed. He thought about his cheating first love again. Angrily, he shoved Pearl away. Pearl couldn't understand why he couldn't just forget, let go of herself and let go of the other person. Wouldn't it be better for both to move on and live happily? Pearl asked Junyu to look at her and the people around them. Stop dwelling on bad memories from the past. Only those who care about you will get hurt this way. This scene was seen by his mother. She threw Pearl's notebook right in her son's face, telling him to take a good look at what this is. If it weren't for Pearl's tireless efforts, Junyu's communication disorder would never have improved. And Pearl also repeatedly called the doctor every day, hoping the doctor could provide some reasonable suggestions. Pearl has been so sincere with him. Why can't he move on from the past? This was also something his mother couldn't understand. Little did she know, Junyu had secretly fallen in love with Pearl, but he didn't know how to express it. The next day was the day Junyu and Pearl were going on a date. His mother told him to take out his wallet, and stuffed all his recent earnings into it. Since he's going out to have fun, he should enjoy it. Under the influence of his aunts, Pearl became stunningly beautiful. Today, they were determined to make Pearl a beauty. As expected, clothes make the man. Pearl looked so good that even Junyu felt a little embarrassed. Even an ugly duckling can be a hidden gem with a little dressing up. On the way, Pearl took the initiative to hold Junyu's hand. In the Korean dramas he had seen, this was a basic dating etiquette. Junyu rare smiled, but unexpectedly, a small truck suddenly rushed out from behind. He quickly pulled Pearl into his arms. It was clear that Junyu still cared about Pearl deep down. Pearl, who had never been in close contact with the opposite sex, felt her face burning. Although this was the development she had hoped for, she still felt that a woman should be a little more reserved. The two of them passed by the ever-changing Magic Square, with strange and bizarre ice cream stands. Junyu even gave Pearl a beautiful hairpin. As long as there is love in the heart, even a piece of grass would bring joy, because this represented a significant step forward in their relationship. Then Junyu took Pearl to a Vietnamese restaurant. This was also his way of caring for Pearl's homesickness. After coming to Korea for so long, the thing Pearl missed most was her mother and the scenery of home. She never expected there would be authentic Vietnamese food here. She wrapped the lettuce with dumpling skins. Although it looked colorful, it probably didn't taste as fresh. Pearl had tasted the flavor of love. Today was the happiest day she'd had since arriving in Korea. In Vietnam, there's also a big river like this. She remembered her mother's advice to live happily. Her grandmother had worked the land with her hands. Her mother had raised her all her life. Each generation becomes stronger and happier. Pearl wanted to break free from the cage, to cross class boundaries and find her own happiness. She really wanted to be with Junyu forever. After all, in Vietnam, a man as fair as Junyu was considered a handsome man, while she was the nameless ugly duckling. Junyu wanted Pearl to give him some time. He hadn't figured out what path to take yet. When he got home, Junyu flipped through photos from his college days. At that time, he never imagined his life would be like this. He had once promised his first love that one would run the market and the other would run the industry. The two of them would join forces to make the company big and strong. Dreams are cruelly shattered by reality. Now, Junyu just wants to find a stable job and be filial to his parents. All those unrealistic things no longer matter. Pearl suggested that they deliver a package to her father tomorrow. The hardest part is the beginning, but with effort, one can rise above. The next day, the two of them drove a delivery truck, but the truck was moving so slowly, they might only arrive tomorrow. Unbeknownst to Pearl, Junyu's condition flared up while driving, which led to a serious car accident. Even now, he still feels a sense of unease, but unexpectedly, a car behind them was honking non-stop, and the driver was shouting angrily at Junyu. Pearl couldn't take it anymore and yelled back in Vietnamese. Junyu never expected the kind-hearted Pearl to have this side. After some time practicing, Junyu slowly recovered with Pearl's encouragement. He could even go out to make deliveries by himself. To reward Pearl, he decided to take her to the nearby mall for some shopping, but unexpectedly, his first love, Jaeon, was also there shopping with her mother. The two of them bumped into each other in the restroom. Jaeon was so scared that her wallet dropped to the ground. She grabbed her mother and was about to run away. If their past relationship was exposed, her husband would surely throw her out. But Junyu wanted an answer that would make him completely give up. Jaeon begged him not to appear again. Just seeing Junyu made her feel disgusted. Jaeon's words hurt Junyu and made his condition flare up again. Fortunately, Pearl, who had just finished in the restroom, saw the scene. She quickly took Junyu to the resting area. The first thing Junyu said when he woke up was to tell Pearl not to tell his parents. However, Pearl had already heard from others that Junyu was still thinking about a woman. No woman would be okay with her husband having someone else in his heart. Pearl begged Junyu to forget about that person. Since she didn't want him, don't keep chasing after her. Junyu didn't say a word and rushed back. He opened the phone book he hadn't touched in a long time, and dialed Jaeon's number directly. Never had anyone seen a man this hopelessly devoted. He was deceived by his ex-girlfriend who took all his savings, and even ended up spending years in a foreign prison, which left him with a severe communication disorder. Just as his illness was finally cured by his Vietnamese wife, he immediately set off to find his ex again. Pearl hurried to stop Junyu from leaving. She couldn't bear to see him hurt by that woman again, but Junyu's heart was still full of his ex-lover. He couldn't hear Pearl's pleas at all. When Ji Young saw Junyu show up, she was terrified. If her in-laws found out her secret, she'd be ruined. Her image was that of an innocent and respectable young lady. Her husband Ingming was puzzled by the late-night visitor. Ji Young quickly said it was her mother, and ran outside in a panic. The man who once made her heart race now only brought dread. Ji Young just wanted him gone as soon as possible. She thought he had come to destroy her peaceful life, telling him to move on and live properly, before she said something she'd regret. But Junyu came here for a reason. After all, Ji Young had ruined his life and never even apologized. He couldn't understand why he had to suffer so much. Was money really the only thing that mattered? Ji Young feared her husband might notice her absence, so she apologized repeatedly, begging Junyu to leave immediately. Her dismissive tone made him furious, but expecting genuine remorse from a woman like her was impossible. She even blamed everything on him, saying if he hadn't clung to her back then he wouldn't have gone to prison. After all this time, why was he still hung up on the past? If his parents had money too, none of this would have happened. Enraged, Junyu slapped her, and declared they were done forever, though neither had forgotten the other. Money drove them apart for good. Ji Young still had her husband to comfort her, and Junyu still had his kind-hearted wife Pearl. When he got home, Pearl rushed to greet him. She lied to his mother, saying they had been shopping together, trying to avoid a family argument over his ex. Junyu pulled his cold hands away slowly, telling her not to care so much about him anymore, and to stop waiting for him. But Pearl refused to give up on love. She adored him too much. To her, he was the perfect man, his eyes and his smile everything she dreamed of. But Junyu's heart was still filled with anger and resentment, leaving no room for Pearl. Her eyes filled with tears. Her love felt like sand slipping through her fingers. The tighter she held on, the faster it escaped. Her palms hurt from holding on, but she still couldn't let go. Luckily, her mother-in-law still cared for her. Even when she burned the meal, she wasn't scolded at all. Instead, the mother called Junyu in for a talk. She had long noticed he hadn't let go of his ex. She reminded him who climbed mountains to collect herbs for him, who asked doctors every day about his recovery, and who stayed by his side through every hardship. Even his own mother couldn't have done that. How could he ignore such a devoted wife for another woman? Junyu told them to stop interfering. He hadn't chosen this marriage willingly. It was like the story of the farmer and the snake. The next morning, Pearl climbed into his truck. She still believed he had feelings for her, so she shamelessly insisted on going to work with him. Annoyed, Junyu tried to pull her out of the car, but Pearl clung to the door, refusing to let go. She wouldn't leave no matter what. With no other choice, Junyu gave in. If they didn't leave soon, the deliveries would be late. At lunch, Junyu quickly finished his food, hoping to ditch Pearl once and for all, but she climbed right back in again, realizing she hadn't eaten enough. He sighed and took her back to finish her meal. Junyu wished she'd find a man who hadn't been broken, someone who could truly love and protect her. but his own heart was too damaged. He could never love another woman again. In 2 years Pearl would gain Korean citizenship. Maybe living as respectful strangers wasn't so bad after all. But now even her favorite noodles tasted bland. On the way home she replayed their memories over and over. His kindness, his warmth, his small acts of care. Every bit was carved into her heart. Eventually Pearl gave in to his decision, but she needed to know one thing. Had he ever once felt something for her? Even for a single moment during their time together? Junyu didn't want to answer. No matter what she thought, they could never be. The next day while cleaning with her mother-in-law, Pearl found a large bottle of herbal wine. Her mother-in-law said drinking it would ease a broken heart. Junyu's father usually drank a small glass at night, but while everyone was out Pearl secretly finished the whole bottle. By the time they returned she was completely drunk. She didn't do anything reckless. She just thanked everyone for all their kindness, saying only Junyu was the bad guy. Then she sat at the piano and began playing nonsense tunes. His mother was furious and scolded him. "Look what you've done to such a sweet girl." Junyu quickly carried Pearl back to her room. The first thing she did when she woke up was throw up. Then she asked him to take her somewhere by a stream. She said she could hardly breathe in that heavy house anymore. After marriage the woman was adored by her mother-in-law like a treasure. Whenever her husband showed the slightest hint of impatience, he would immediately face his mother's harsh discipline. Pearl was never allowed to do any heavy chores. But after nearly a year there was still no sign of a baby, so the mother-in-law decided to take Pearl to the hospital, believing that having a child was the only way to win her son's heart. As Pearl sat on the examination table she made a sudden decision. She asked the doctor to call her mother-in-law inside. She couldn't take the test, because the two of them shared a secret no one knew. Once home Pearl confessed that she and Junyu were not truly married. She didn't blame him for it. Instead she admitted she only married to gain Korean citizenship, and had come to Korea without even telling her mother. Junyu rushed in to take responsibility for everything. He couldn't bear to let Pearl take all the blame. Otherwise his conscience would never rest. Feeling defeated Junyu called himself useless, saying no matter how hard he tried nothing ever worked. He had already lost hope in life. His father couldn't take it anymore, and struck him across the face. Junyu had always been the family's pride. His father once hoped he'd recover and lead the family, but now all their efforts felt wasted. His father had never hit him before. Unable to face reality Junyu ran out of the house. His mother was the most worried, afraid his illness might relapse outside. His father, though equally hurt, said this was something a man had to face alone. If he couldn't think it through he'd stay lost forever. Pearl waited outside until late at night. When Junyu still hadn't come home, she ran into the unfamiliar streets to find him. Junyu's mind was no longer on his first love. Only guilt toward Pearl filled his thoughts. Along with his father's heartfelt words, he decided to speak with his doctor again. The doctor wondered what he was so afraid of. If someone truly cared for him he should be grateful. But Junyu feared his illness would drag Pearl down. The doctor said the answer wasn't in his head but in his heart. If he followed it everything would fall into place. No matter the outcome it would be a new beginning. On his way home he got a call from his mother. She told him Pearl had gone missing while looking for him. He suddenly remembered their secret meeting place. Meanwhile Pearl was still searching desperately in the pouring rain. She stopped in front of every passing truck hoping it was his, praying Junyu had come back to find her. But each time hope turned into heartbreak, until she was too tired to move. She curled up under a cardboard box, silently guarding the bench where they once sat. When Junyu arrived and saw her there, his heart filled with deep regret. The rain felt like fate's invisible thread, tying two souls from different worlds together. Junyu pulled Pearl into his arms, promising never to let her feel pain again, and never to leave her side. He vowed to face his feelings honestly, and told his family his decision. From now on they would live as real husband and wife. No more foolish 2-year agreements. His parents found it hard to believe, but Pearl's sincerity reassured them. So his father gave the young couple another chance. He knew Junyu's recovery depended on Pearl's support. His sisters too worried endlessly for him, wanting him to finally be happy. They decided if he and Pearl were truly together, they should celebrate somewhere romantic. Coincidentally a free stay at a 5-star hotel was available, so they all planned a fun couple's getaway. Winning first place in the event would fulfill Junyu's wish, and ease their parents' worries. The next day at the watermelon eating contest, all the men competed fiercely to impress their girlfriends. By the second round only 3 contestants remained. Whoever could stand in the icy pit the longest would be the final winner. It was a true test of endurance. This was not the time to give up. Even if their teeth chattered they had to hold on. In the end one sister's boyfriend lost strength, and accidentally pulled another contestant down, leaving the younger sister to claim the prize. That was how Pearl and Junyu won their trip to the 5-star hotel. That night Pearl remembered her aunt's advice, that to be attractive a woman should have wet hair, and shake it twice before going out. So Pearl eagerly followed her instructions, but her awkward pose made her look like a bent tree. Junyu couldn't help but laugh at her antics. He gently pulled her onto the bed, and poured her a glass of old red wine. Time slipped by as the night deepened, but when Pearl's damp hair touched the cool air, a sudden sneeze broke the tender moment. Junyu kindly helped her dry her hair, and we'll leave the rest of that scene to the audience's imagination. The next morning Pearl received a letter from her mother, telling her not to worry. She was doing well running a small shop back in Vietnam, though she missed her daughter dearly. She hoped her in-laws were kind to her, and only wished for Pearl's happiness. From her mother's handwriting, Pearl realized her eyesight was fading. Doctors had said she might go blind within 2 years, and more than a year had already passed. No one knew how much time was left. Before that happened, she had to find her father and bring him to see her mother.